a few years ago, I just said that, the next China is actually still a lot of China.
I was pleased to hear Premier Li and the government actually launching a consumption-led economy, domestic one in China.
China's supply chain is unmatched in many different segments, right? So as we found, there are many different segments where China is like 80% or 90%, right, of actually the world supply. So for them, I think that this has become a little bit of a, yes, China plus one, but China plus one also means that China is still very, very important. And I think that in the last few years, I think that most multinationals started off with, well, let's find the plan B. But the plan B ended up having China being a pretty big component of the plan B, right? So a few years ago, I just said that, the next China is actually still a lot of China, but it's a little bit also where for the same value for money, for the same cost efficiency in many different categories, this is something that actually will be very, very difficult. A lot of people are trying to say, well, let's build over here. But you know what? The equipment comes from China, the raw materials come from China, the supply chain comes from China, and then everything else seems to be, well, as you count it all up, the value add at the end, still a lot comes from China as well, although there's no direct export, yeah?
China is now, when you look at the EV, the LFP lithium-ion battery, is the #1 lower total cost of ownership, battery material in the world. And actually, I invited Chinese players to come and invest in Europe because that's the best available technology. So while it's not easy the short term and navigating through the tariffs, right? And I hope there is light in the tunnel and there are conversations between the two, countries. Frankly, even in Q1, GDP China grew 5%. They are still exporting and there is diversion of output, specifically in the chemical industry, into Europe. I was pleased to hear Premier Li and the government actually launching a consumption-led economy, domestic one in China, which is extremely important to address the capacity issues. But frankly, in the chemical industry, there are bright days through innovation and innovation-led economy, and China is going to become a champion in that in our industry.